My phone buzzed with a text from my daughter Sarah while I was reviewing the final payment for her house. Dad, change of plans for Italy. Darian says it's family only now, so you can't come. I stared at those words, my coffee growing cold. After 20 years of sacrifices, after $120,000 for their dream home, I was suddenly not family. My hands trembled as I set down the phone and reached for my laptop. Sarah had no idea what she'd just set in motion. The morning sun filtered through my kitchen window as I sat there still processing Sarah's message. At 68 years old, I'd built my life around two things: my construction company and my family. Now retired for 3 years, only one of those remained. Or so I'd thought until 5 minutes ago. Sarah was my only child, the light of my life, since the day she was born. Her mother, Margaret, and I had tried for years before Sarah came along, our miracle baby, who arrived when we'd almost given up hope. I'd held her tiny hand in mine and promised her the world. For 32 years I'd kept that promise. When Margaret passed away 5 years ago after a brief battle with cancer, Sarah became my anchor. The house felt empty without Margaret's laughter filling the rooms, without her gentle humming as she tended her garden. Sarah stepped up during those dark months, visiting every day, bringing groceries, making sure I ate proper meals instead of just coffee and toast. "Dad, you gave us everything," she'd said one evening as we sorted through Margaret's things. "Let me take care of you now." But somewhere along the way, things had shifted. The change was gradual, like the slow erosion I'd seen on construction sites, where water found its way through the smallest cracks. It started when she met Darian 3.5 years ago. Darian Hayes swept into our lives like a force of nature. Tall, charming, with perfectly styled dark hair and a smile that never quite reached his eyes. He worked in financial consulting, though the details always remained vague when I asked. Sarah was smitten from their first date. "He treats me like a princess, Dad," she'd gushed over lunch one day. "He says I deserve the finest things in life." I'd wanted to be happy for her. After a string of relationships that hadn't worked out, Sarah deserved someone who appreciated her. But something about Darian set off my internal alarms. Maybe it was the way he assessed my house the first time he visited his eyes, calculating the value of everything. Or how he'd casually mentioned my impressive portfolio after Sarah let slip I'd sold my construction company. The wedding came fast, just 8 months after they met. I paid for everything naturally. The country club venue, the 7-piece band, the flowers flown in from Ecuador. $45,000 to give my little girl her dream wedding. Darian's family contributed nothing, claiming financial hardship. His parents lived in Maine and couldn't even afford the flight, he'd said. I covered their tickets too. After the wedding, the requests started small. Could I help with the down payment on a car? Darian's credit was temporarily affected by a business deal gone wrong. Of course, I said yes. Then came the business opportunity that just needed a small investment to get off the ground. $20,000 here, $15,000 there. The house was the biggest ask yet. Sarah called me crying last year, saying their landlord was selling and they had nowhere to go. Property prices had skyrocketed, and they couldn't qualify for a decent mortgage with Darian's temporary credit issues. "It would just be until Darian's new venture takes off," she'd pleaded. "You know I'd never ask if we had another option." So I'd done it. $120,000 for a 4-bedroom colonial in Westfield, a nice neighborhood with good schools. I'd put it in my name temporarily with the understanding they'd refinance within a year. That was 11 months ago. The Italy trip was supposed to be our family celebration. My brother Anthony had moved to Rome 15 years ago to open a restaurant. He'd been begging me to visit, and with my 70th birthday approaching, it seemed like perfect timing. 8 months of planning had gone into this 2-week adventure. Sarah had been so excited researching restaurants and museums, practicing basic Italian phrases. I pulled up our group chat from just last week. Sarah had sent dozens of messages about the trip. Can't wait to see Uncle Anthony. Dad, you'll love the villa he booked for us. Darian found this amazing wine tour in Tuscany. Now suddenly I wasn't family. I set down my coffee mug and opened my laptop. First things first, I needed to check the house payments. I'd been transferring money monthly to Sarah's account to cover the mortgage insurance and property taxes. As I scrolled through my bank statements, something caught my eye. The amounts were wrong. I'd been sending $3,500 monthly for the mortgage, but the withdrawals from the account were showing $4,200. I clicked through to the detailed statements and felt my stomach drop. Additional transfers had been made from my contractor supply accounts. Small amounts at first, $200 here, $500 there. But they'd grown larger over the past 6 months. $3,000, $5,000. One transfer for $8,500 just 2 weeks ago. My hands shook as I tallied the extra withdrawals, $47,000 beyond what I'd authorized for the house. Sarah still had access to these accounts from when she'd helped with bookkeeping during Margaret's illness. I'd never removed her, never imagined I'd need to. This was my daughter, my baby girl, who used to leave crayon drawings on my truck seat saying, "I love you, Daddy." I reached for my phone to call her, then stopped. The text message still glowed on the screen. Darian says it's family only. Something was very wrong here. This wasn't just about money or a vacation. The Sarah I raised wouldn't do this. She was being influenced, manipulated maybe. But by whom and why? I closed the laptop and stood up, my knees protesting after sitting too long. Outside, Margaret's garden was in full bloom. She'd loved her roses, spending hours tending them, talking to them like old friends. I'd maintained them after she passed, learning from the notebooks she'd left behind. It was meditative work that helped me think clearly. As I deadheaded the spent blooms, I made a decision. I wouldn't confront Sarah yet. First, I needed information. In construction, you never tear down a wall without knowing if it's load-bearing. You investigate, you plan, you prepare. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found Tom Richardson. We'd gone to high school together, and he'd risen to become regional manager at First National Bank. More importantly, he was someone I trusted. "Steve, how are you, buddy?" Tom's voice was warm with genuine pleasure. "I need your help, Tom. Can we meet privately?" His tone immediately shifted to concern. "Of course. Everything okay?" "That's what I need to find out." We arranged to meet at his office the next morning. As I hung up, I looked back at Margaret's roses. She'd taught me that sometimes you had to prune hard to save the plant. Cut away the diseased parts so healthy growth could return. I had a feeling I was about to do some serious pruning. That evening, I sat in my study surrounded by bank statements and financial records. The more I dug, the more discrepancies I found. Transfers to luxury car dealerships, high-end jewelry stores, electronic boutiques. All traced back to those contractor accounts Sarah could access. My construction company had been my life's work. Started with one truck and a willingness to outwork everyone else. By the time I sold it, I had 40 employees and contracts all over the state. The sale had set me up for a comfortable retirement enough to help my family and enjoy my remaining years. Now someone was stealing from me, and that someone appeared to be my own daughter. No, I corrected myself. Not Sarah. This had Darian written all over it. The timing matched too perfectly. The unauthorized withdrawals started just after their wedding, small at first, testing the waters. When I didn't notice, they grew bolder. I picked up a photo from my desk, one of my favorites. Sarah, at 16, covered in paint from helping me renovate the garage. She'd insisted on helping, wanting to learn the trade. We'd spent all summer on that project, just the two of us, music blaring from the radio as we worked. She'd been so proud when we finished. Where had that girl gone? My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. Sarah's name flashed on the screen. For a moment, I considered not answering. Then I took a breath and accepted the call. "Hi, sweetheart. I said, keeping my voice steady. Dad, I wanted to call and explain about Italy. She sounded nervous, words tumbling out quickly. It's just that Darian's been stressed with work, and he thought it might be better if it was just us. You understand, right? We can take another trip together soon. Of course, I lied smoothly. Whatever makes you comfortable. Really? The relief in her voice was palpable. Oh, Dad, I knew you'd understand. You're the best. Actually, since we're talking, I wanted to mention something else. Darian found this amazing investment opportunity. Sarah, I'm sorry, but I've got someone at the door. Can we talk about this later? Oh, sure, Dad. Love you. Love you too, sweetheart. I hung up and stared at the phone. She'd moved from banning me from the vacation directly to asking for more money. No shame, no hesitation. This wasn't the daughter I'd raised. Tomorrow I'd start getting answers. Tonight I had planning to do. I pulled out a legal pad and began making notes. First, secure my remaining assets. Second, investigate Darian properly. Third, document everything. And fourth, figure out how to save my daughter from whatever web she'd been caught in. Because despite everything, she was still my little girl. And I'd be damned if I'd let anyone, including her, destroy the life I'd built or the family I loved. The clock on the mantel chimed 11. I gathered up the papers and locked them in my safe. Tomorrow would begin what I suspected would be a long journey. But I'd built my business one brick at a time, and I'd handle this the same way. Methodically, strategically, and with the kind of patience that only comes from years of waiting for concrete to cure and foundations to settle. Darian Hayes had no idea what he'd started when he decided I wasn't family. But he was about to find out. The next morning arrived with a thunderstorm that matched my mood. I drove through sheets of rain to reach First National Bank, where Tom Richardson waited in his corner office. 20 years of friendship showed in the worry lines around his eyes as I explained my situation. Jesus, Steve. Tom said, running a hand through his thinning hair. Let me pull up your complete account history, all of them. For the next hour, we pored over records dating back 2 years. Tom's secretary brought coffee that grew cold as we worked. The evidence was damning. Beyond the $47,000 I'd already discovered, there were smaller transactions I'd missed. ATM withdrawals just under the reporting limit. Wire transfers to accounts I didn't recognize. The total was staggering, nearly $70,000. Who else has access to these accounts? Tom asked, though we both knew the answer. Just Sarah. I added her during Margaret's last months when I couldn't handle the business finances alone. Tom pulled off his glasses and cleaned them slowly. Steve, I need to ask you something difficult. Is it possible Sarah doesn't know about these transactions? Could someone else be using her access? I wanted to believe that. God, how I wanted to believe it. But I'd seen the luxury items appearing in their house. The new boat parked in their driveway. Sarah's designer handbags that cost more than most people's monthly salary. I need to know more about Darian, I said finally. Can you recommend someone discreet? Tom wrote a name on his business card. Marcus Grant, former FBI, now private investigation. He's handled sensitive matters for several of our clients. Tell him I sent you. I left the bank with a folder of evidence and a growing certainty that my son-in-law was not who he claimed to be. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets gleaming and fresh. I called Marcus Grant from my truck. His office was in a converted Victorian near downtown, the kind of place that whispered discretion and old money. Marcus himself was nothing like the private investigators in movies. Mid-50s, wearing a simple gray suit, he looked more like an accountant than a former federal agent. Which was probably the point. Tom Richardson called ahead, Marcus said, gesturing to a leather chair. He said you have a delicate family situation. I laid out everything. The unauthorized withdrawals, the sudden exclusion from the family trip, Darian's vague background. Marcus took notes in neat handwriting, occasionally asking clarifying questions. Tell me about Darian's work, he said. Financial consulting you mentioned. That's what he says. The company is called Hayes Financial Solutions, but I've never seen an office or met any employees. He works from home mostly, lots of phone calls behind closed doors. Marcus nodded. And his family? Parents in Maine, supposedly too poor to travel. I've never met them. No siblings that he's mentioned. Come to think of it, I've never met anyone from his life before Sarah. Red flags, Marcus murmured, writing faster. What about the wedding, his side of the guest list? I thought back to that day. Maybe 20 people said they were college friends and work associates. Nice enough folks, but no one seemed to know him well. No childhood friends, no extended family beyond his parents. Marcus set down his pen. Mr. Carlson, I'll be straight with you. This pattern suggests someone who's either hiding their past or has manufactured a new identity. I can have preliminary findings within 72 hours, but a complete background investigation will take 2 weeks. Do it, I said without hesitation. He quoted his fee, which was substantial, but fair. I wrote the check immediately. As I stood to leave, Marcus offered one piece of advice. Don't change your behavior toward them. Act normal. If Darian is what I suspect he might be, you don't want to trigger his flight response before we know everything. I drove home through suburban streets I'd helped build. My company had constructed a third of the houses in this neighborhood. Solid foundations, quality materials built to last generations. The irony wasn't lost on me that my own family foundation was crumbling. At home, I found a message from Sarah on my answering machine. Bright, cheerful talking about dinner plans for next week. No mention of Italy, or the money she'd tried to bring up yesterday. The normalcy of it chilled me more than anger would have. 3 days passed in strange suspension. I tended Margaret's garden, met friends for coffee, played my weekly poker game, all while waiting for Marcus to call. When my phone finally rang on Thursday afternoon, his voice was grim. Can you come to my office? This isn't a phone conversation. I made the drive in record time. Marcus had a thick folder on his desk and the expression of someone about to deliver terrible news. Darian Hayes doesn't exist. He began without preamble. At least not before 4 years ago. The social security number he's using belonged to a child who died in 1993. Classic identity theft technique. My mouth went dry. Then who is he? His real name is Daniel Rostov, born in Newark, 41 years old. And Steve, he's done this before. Marcus spread photos across his desk. Wedding pictures, but not Sarah's. 2 different women, both beautiful, both wearing the dazzled expression of new brides. Both standing next to the man I knew as Darian. Patricia Morrison, married 2015, divorced 2017. Lost her inheritance from her grandmother, about $300,000. Elena Vance, married 2018, divorced 2021. Her divorce filing lists debts of over $500,000 that appeared during the marriage. I studied the photos. Same charming smile, same calculating eyes. Even the same type of women targeted, early 30s, professional, close to their families. Where are these women now? Patricia lives in Oregon, remarried, slowly rebuilding her life. Elena. Marcus paused. Elena attempted suicide after the divorce. She survived, but she's still in therapy. Her family says Rostov not only stole their money, but psychologically tortured her. Gaslighting, isolation from family, emotional manipulation. Classic predator tactics. My hands clenched into fists. Why isn't he in prison? He's clever. Nothing directly traceable to him. The debts were all in the wives' names. The money disappeared into offshore accounts. By the time they realized what happened, he was gone. Clean breaks, no forwarding addresses. Until now, I said. Until now. Marcus agreed. But there's more. Rostov has significant gambling debts. My contacts in Atlantic City have him down for at least $200,000 to some very unforgiving people. Russian mob connections. The kind of people who break bones first and ask questions later. The pieces clicked into place. Darian needed money fast. He'd found it in Sarah and through her in me. There's something else. Marcus continued pulling out another document. Sarah visited a fertility clinic last month. She's pregnant about 8 weeks along. The room spun. A grandchild. My first grandchild fathered by a con artist and criminal. Does she know what he is? I asked, though I dreaded the answer. That's harder to determine, but I found something interesting. Marcus showed me credit card records. Large purchases of pregnancy tests, prenatal vitamins, fertility treatments. All bought by Rostov, not Sarah. And look at this. He pointed to a pharmacy receipt. Clomiphene citrate. It's a fertility drug, but in men it can cause false positive pregnancy tests and mimic pregnancy symptoms in women when slipped into their food or drinks. Side effects include nausea, breast tenderness, mood swings. The implication hit me like a sledgehammer. He's faking her pregnancy. It's possible. The clinic visit shows consultation only no confirmed pregnancy. But Sarah might believe she's pregnant based on symptoms and false tests. It's a classic manipulation tactic. Use the promise of a baby to extract more money from family, then claim miscarriage when the con is complete. I stood abruptly, rage flooding through me. This monster was not only stealing from me, but playing with my daughter's dreams of motherhood. I need everything documented, I said. Every piece of evidence, every photo, every record. Already done. Marcus handed me a USB drive. Encrypted, password protected. There's also something else you should see. He opened a new folder, revealing surveillance photos taken over the past few days. Darian entering a shabby motel, meeting with rough-looking men in parking garages, and most damning entering a luxury apartment building downtown, where he was greeted warmly by a young blonde woman who was definitely not my daughter. Apartment 1203 leased under the name Daniel Ross, close enough to his real name that he can remember it. The woman is Brittany Chen, 26, cocktail waitress at the casino. She thinks she's dating a wealthy investor who's about to divorce his horrible wife. I looked at the photos of this young woman, another victim in training. How long before he runs? Based on his pattern, he's already laying groundwork. The Italy trip is suspicious. He might have connections there for moving money. I'd guess you have maybe a month before he disappears with whatever he can grab. A month to save my daughter and stop a predator. I gathered the files and stood to leave. Steve, Marcus called, as I reached the door. Be careful. Cornered animals are dangerous and Rostov has more to lose this time. Those Russian connections aren't for show. If he realizes you're onto him... Let me worry about that, I said. Just keep digging. I want to know every single thing about this man. Driving home, I thought about Sarah as a little girl. How she'd run to me with scraped knees, trusting Daddy to make it better. She was still that little girl, just with bigger wounds I couldn't see. I'd failed to protect her from Darian initially, too caught up in my own grief over Margaret to see the warning signs. But I'd spent my life building things, and now I had a different kind of construction project. I was going to build a trap. Brick by brick, detail by detail. And when it was complete, Daniel Rostov would discover that preying on my family was the worst mistake of his miserable life. At home, I locked the evidence in my safe and poured a generous scotch. Outside, Margaret's roses bloomed in defiance of the morning storm. I raised my glass to them, to her memory, and to the justice I was about to construct. The game was on, and I'd been playing strategic games since before this con artist was born. The 4th of July arrived with perfect summer weather, the kind of day Margaret would have loved. I'd spent the week since meeting Marcus playing my role flawlessly. Normal dinners with Sarah and Darian discussing their Italy plans with enthusiasm I didn't feel. If Darian noticed anything amiss, he didn't show it. Planning the barbecue gave me purpose and cover. I'd invited the whole family, my sister Ruth, from Boston, cousins from across the state, and most importantly, my brother Anthony, who'd flown in from Rome. "You sure you want this big crowd?" Sarah had asked when I told her. You haven't done a full family gathering since your mother passed, I finished gently. I know, but it's time. Besides, Anthony's here and who knows when that'll happen again. The morning of the party, I woke early to start the smoker. Ribs brisket, pulled pork, the works. Margaret's recipes, all of them. The familiar ritual of preparing meat and tending fire calmed my racing thoughts. Anthony found me on the deck at 6 a.m., coffee in hand. My younger brother, by 5 years, he'd inherited the Italian features from our mother's side, while I got our Irish father's build. His restaurant in Rome had made him successful, but he still moved with the easy grace of someone comfortable in kitchens and chaos. You look tired, brother, he said in greeting. Lots on my mind. Anthony studied me over his mug. We'd spoken briefly when he arrived, but I hadn't told him everything yet. This about Sarah? I nodded. Stay close today. Watch Darian. Tell me what you see. That bad? Worse. By noon, the backyard filled with family. Ruth commanded the kitchen like a general, organizing salads and sides with help from various cousins. Children ran through the sprinklers I'd set up, their shrieks of delight echoing off the fence. Sarah and Darian arrived fashionably late, her carrying a store-bought pie, him with a 6-pack of expensive beer no one would drink. He'd dressed the part of casual wealth designer polo-pressed shorts watch that cost more than most cars. Mr. Carlson. He grabbed my hand in both of his, pumping enthusiastically. Fantastic spread. You've outdone yourself. I smiled and played along. Just like old times. Sarah, honey, Ruth needs you in the kitchen. As she hurried inside, Darian's mask slipped slightly. Without Sarah as buffer, he seemed unsure how to relate to me. I excused myself to check the smoker, leaving him to navigate the crowd of relatives who'd heard just enough about him to be suspicious. The party unfolded in layers. On the surface, a perfect family gathering. Children playing adults, laughing, the smell of barbecue mixing with Ruth's famous potato salad. But underneath currents of observation and calculation, Anthony worked the crowd with professional ease, somehow always near Darian, without seeming to follow him. My nephew Eric, a software engineer from MIT, helped me with a computer problem in my office. Within minutes, he'd installed hidden cameras with views of the desk and safe. These are seriously advanced, Uncle Steve, Eric said, adjusting the tiny lenses. Motion-activated night vision uploads to secure cloud storage. Where'd you get them? Friend of a friend, I said vaguely. I've had some things go missing. Want to solve the mystery? Eric's expression said he suspected more, but family loyalty kept him quiet. Whatever you need. Password's your usual. Changed it. Margaret's birthday plus our anniversary date. He programmed it quickly. All set. Anyone messes with your stuff, you'll have full video evidence. Back outside, I found Darian holding court near the pool, telling stories about international finance to my cousin Pete, who ran a small accounting firm. Pete's expression suggested he wasn't buying what Darian was selling. So you see, Darian was saying, with the right offshore structures, you can minimize exposure while maximizing returns. Interesting, Pete replied dryly. Which firm did you say you were with? Hayes Financial. We're boutique, very exclusive clientele. Never heard of you. And I know most of the players in the state. Darian's smile tightened. Well, we keep a low profile. Discretion is everything in our business. I intervened before the conversation could escalate. Darian, could you help me with the ice running low? He followed me to the garage where I kept the extra coolers. Away from the crowd, his demeanor shifted. Your family asks a lot of questions, he said, not quite complaining. They're protective. Been that way since Margaret died. I hefted a bag of ice. Speaking of family shame, your parents couldn't make it from Maine. Yes, well, the cost of flights these days. I would have covered it. Still could if you want to invite them to dinner before Italy. His face cycled through emotions before settling on regretful. They're not much for traveling. Health issues. Nothing serious, I hope. No, just Elderly, you understand? I did understand. I understood he was lying through his perfect teeth. We returned to find Sarah in animated conversation with Anthony, gesturing wildly as she described Rome from travel videos. Anthony caught my eye over her shoulder, his expression grim. He'd seen something. The afternoon wore on. Darian drank steadily, but carefully, never quite crossing into obvious intoxication. He avoided extended conversations, moving through the party like a politician working a room. Always charming, never substantial. Around 4 o'clock, Sarah found me refreshing the drink station. "Dad, this is wonderful. Like when Mom was here." I hugged her, noting how thin she'd gotten. "You feeling okay? You look tired." "Just work stress, and I haven't been sleeping well. Weird dreams." "Maybe you should see a doctor." She laughed, but it sounded forced. "I'm fine, Dad. Actually." She glanced around, then leaned closer. "Can I ask you something about money?" My pulse quickened, but I kept my voice level. "Of course. Darian's been talking about liquidating some assets. He says the market's about to shift and we should have more cash on hand. Do you think... you've always been smart about investments." "What kind of assets?" "Well, he mentioned maybe refinancing the house, getting some equity out." "The house I owned? The house in my name." "That's a big decision, sweetheart." "I know. He says we could invest the money and triple it within a year. Some opportunity in Italy." There it was. The Italy connection Marcus had suspected. "Tell you what," I said carefully. "Why don't you both come by this week and we'll go over the numbers together? I've got some investment properties I'm thinking of selling anyway. Maybe we could pool resources." Her face lit up. "Really? Oh, Dad, that would be amazing. Darian will be so excited." "I'll bet he will," I thought. The party wound down as the sun set. Families gathered, their children exchanging hugs and promises to meet more often. Darian made a show of helping clean up, carrying exactly 3 plates to the kitchen before declaring he needed to take an important call. I found him in my office 20 minutes later, standing by my desk phone, nowhere in sight. "Looking for something?" I asked. He startled, recovering quickly. "Just admiring your photographs. Is this Margaret?" He held their wedding photo, the one where she laughed at something I'd whispered during the ceremony. "Yes. Sarah looks just like her. Beautiful women, both of them." Something in his tone made my skin crawl. I took the photo and placed it back carefully. "We should rejoin the party." As we left, I noted the position of everything on my desk. The cameras would tell me if he returned. The last guests departed near 10. Anthony helped me store leftovers while Sarah and Darian said goodbyes. When we were alone in the kitchen, my brother spoke quietly. "He's running a game, Steve. I've seen it in Rome. The charm, the vague business talk, the way he watches people to see what they want to hear. We get American con artists at the restaurant sometimes thinking Europe is easy marks." "It's worse than that," I said, then gave him the abbreviated version of what Marcus had discovered. Anthony's face darkened with each revelation. "Cazzo," he muttered, slipping into Italian as he did when upset. "And Sarah doesn't know. She's starting to suspect something's off, but she loves him, or thinks she does. What's your plan?" "Still working on it, but I need your help with the Italy angle. Can you check if anyone's been asking about setting up accounts, moving money?" "Already on it. I have friends in banking there. Give me a few days." Sarah appeared in the doorway. "What are you two plotting?" "Just arguing about Mom's sauce recipe." Anthony lied smoothly. "Your father thinks he remembers it better." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Behind her, Darian waited impatient to leave. "Thanks for today, Dad. It was perfect." I walked them to their car, noting the new luxury model with dealer plates. Another purchase with my money, no doubt. Darian shook my hand, holding it a beat too long. "About that investment discussion," he said. "How's Tuesday?" "Tuesday's fine." They drove off, leaving me standing in my driveway. The neighborhood was quiet, porch lights creating pools of safety in the darkness. Inside my house, cameras now watched my office. My brother worked his connections in Rome. A private investigator built a case file. The trap was taking shape. Tuesday, Darian would come looking for more money. He'd find something else entirely. I went inside and poured 2 glasses of Margaret's favorite wine, setting one at her place at the kitchen table. An old ritual from the first year after she passed. "Wish you were here," I told the empty chair. "You'd know exactly how to handle this, how to save her without destroying her." No answer came, just the tick of the grandfather clock she'd inherited from her parents. But I felt her presence anyway, in the lingering scent of roses from the garden in the photographs, covering the walls, in the determination settling into my bones. Daniel Rostov thought he'd found an easy mark in a lonely old widower. He was about to learn that some foundations run deeper than he could imagine, and that a father's love when threatened could be the most dangerous force of all. Tuesday arrived with the kind of oppressive heat that made the air shimmer off pavement. I'd spent the days since the barbecue making careful preparations. My lawyer, Bradley Morrison, had drawn up documents protecting my assets. My accountant created a detailed forensic analysis of the theft. The trap needed just one more thing bait. At 9 a.m., I called Sarah. "Sweetheart, I've been thinking about our conversation, about the investments. Oh, Dad, Darian's been so excited. He's barely slept working on projections." "I'll bet he has," I thought. "Why don't you both come for dinner tonight? I've had some ideas about liquidating those properties. Might be able to access quite a bit of capital." "How much?" The eagerness in her voice broke my heart. "Maybe 300,000, possibly more. Depends on how we structure things." I heard her relay this to Darian, his response muffled but clearly enthusiastic. "We'll be there at 6, she promised. "Dad, this means so much. You don't know what this could do for our future." Oh, but I did know. Just not the future she imagined. After hanging up, I met with Marcus at a small diner downtown. He slid a thick envelope across the table. "Updates," he said quietly. "Rostov's getting desperate. His gambling debts have increased. The Russians gave him an ultimatum: pay by month's end or face consequences. He's been making calls to contacts in Italy, Switzerland, the Caymans, setting up his escape route." "What about the other woman, Brittany?" "Still seeing her. Told her he's leaving his wife after one last big score. She thinks they're running away together." Marcus shook his head. "Poor kid has no idea she's just another mark." I opened the envelope carefully. More evidence, more photographs, more proof of the monster wearing my son-in-law's face. "There's something else," Marcus continued. "I had a contact run the fertility clinic data. Sarah's not pregnant. The consultation was just that, a consultation. But Rostov's been buying pregnancy hormones enough to dose someone for months. He's definitely faking her symptoms." Rage, cold and precise, settled in my chest. "Can you prove it in court?" "Every prescription, every purchase, it's all here." I studied the pictures of Rostov with his Russian contacts. Hard men with harder eyes, the kind who solved problems with violence. An idea formed. These Russians, they have a legitimate business front. Import-export company. Why? Just wondering if they'd be interested in recovering their money through legal channels. If Rostov were arrested for fraud. Marcus caught on quickly. His assets could be frozen subject to recovery. I might know someone who could make that introduction. Carefully. We discussed details for another hour. By the time I left, another piece of the trap was in place. At home, I prepared dinner with extra care. Steaks dry-aged for 30 days, Margaret's famous twice-baked potatoes, Caesar salad from scratch. If this was to be the last meal I shared with my daughter before her world imploded, I wanted it perfect. Anthony called as I was setting the table. "Brother, I have news. A man matching Rostov's description has been in contact with a private banker in Rome, setting up numbered accounts asking about large cash deposits. My friend says he smells like trouble. Can your friend delay things, require extra documentation?" "Already done. Any transfers will take weeks to clear if they clear at all. Italian bureaucracy has its uses." I thanked him and finished the preparations. At exactly 6 o'clock, headlights swept across my windows. Showtime. Sarah looked worse than she had at the barbecue. Dark circles under her eyes, hands trembling slightly. The fake pregnancy hormones were taking their toll. Darian, by contrast, practically vibrated with anticipation. "Mr. Carlson," he boomed, thrusting a bottle of wine at me. "Chateau Margaux 1995. Special occasion calls for special wine." A bottle worth $800 bought with money stolen from me. I smiled and accepted it graciously. Dinner conversation stayed light at first. Sarah picked at her food, while Darian held forth about market conditions, international opportunities, the changing face of finance. Every word calculated to impress, to reassure, to extract. When Sarah excused herself to the bathroom, Darian's mask shifted. "Steve, I want to thank you. What you're doing for us, it means everything. Sarah deserves the best." "Yes," I agreed. "She does. This Italy trip, it's more than just vacation. I have meetings lined up, opportunities that could set us up for life. But they require capital investment up front." "How much?" His eyes gleamed. "With your $300,000 plus what we can get from the house equity, we'd have enough. I could turn it into millions within a year. That's quite a return. I have connections, people who trust me." He leaned forward, all sincerity and snake oil. "Sarah doesn't know the details. She worries too much. But I'm doing this for her, for our family, for our future children." The mention of children nearly broke my composure. I gripped my wine glass carefully. "Speaking of children," I said casually, "Sarah seems unwell. Has she seen a doctor?" "Just minor stomach issues. Travel stress." He waved dismissively. "She'll be fine once we're in Italy. The Mediterranean air will do her good." Sarah returned, and I steered the conversation to safer waters. We moved to my study after dinner, where I'd prepared a show. "I've been going through my portfolio," I said, spreading papers across the desk. "The commercial properties are worth more than I thought. My accountant thinks I could clear $400,000, maybe $450,000. Darian's pupils dilated. "That's substantial. The question is timing. The sales could take months, but I might be able to get a bridge loan against them, have cash within a week." "A week would be perfect," Darian said quickly. "We leave for Italy in 10 days. There's just one thing." I continued watching him carefully. "Loans of this size require collateral. The bank would want both our names on the documents. Joint liability." I saw the calculation in his eyes. Risk versus reward. His gambling debts versus the score of a lifetime. "Of course," he agreed. "Full transparency. We're family." Family. The word tasted like ashes from his lips. I gathered the papers slowly. "I'll need a few days to arrange things. Meet with the bank lawyers, you understand. Whatever it takes." Darian stood practically pulling Sarah up with him. "We should go. Let your father work his magic." At the door, Sarah hugged me tightly. "I love you, Dad. I don't deserve you." "You deserve the world, sweetheart. Never forget that." I watched their taillights disappear, then returned to my study. The cameras had captured everything. Darian's greed, his lies about Sarah's health, his eagerness to steal even more. But the real revelation came an hour later. Motion sensors triggered the office cameras. On my computer screen, I watched Darian enter through the back door, moving confidently in the dark. He'd copied my keys. He went straight to the wall safe, trying combinations. Birth dates, anniversaries, social security numbers. Getting frustrated when nothing worked. Then to my desk, photographing the fake documents I'd left out. Account numbers for properties that didn't exist. Bank statements showing inflated balances. He spent 20 minutes gathering what he thought was intelligence, never noticing the cameras recording his every move. When he left, relocking the door carefully, I allowed myself a grim smile. The next morning, I had Eric encrypt the footage and store multiple copies. Then I called Bradley Morrison. "I need you to prepare something special," I told my lawyer. "Documents that look legitimate but will trigger fraud alerts the moment anyone tries to use them. Can you do that? Steve, what exactly are you planning? Justice Bradley. Legal documented irrefutable justice. The rest of the week blurred together. Meetings with bankers who owed me favors. Conversations with federal prosecutors about financial fraud. Marcus coordinating with the FBI about Rostov's interstate crimes. I also met with the Russian businessman who held Darian's gambling markers. Viktor Volkov was cultured soft-spoken and absolutely terrifying. Your son-in-law owes me $243,000, he said over Turkish coffee. I am not unreasonable, man. I prefer legal recovery to other methods. If he's arrested and his assets frozen, you'd have claim to restitution. Duh, is much better than breaking kneecaps. Bad for business violence. Makes authorities nervous. We shook hands, his grip like iron wrapped in silk. Friday night, Sarah called crying. Dad, something's wrong. I keep getting sick, but the doctor says I'm not pregnant. Darian says the tests must be wrong, but I don't understand. Come stay with me, I urged. We'll get second opinions. I can't. We leave Monday. Darian says the trip will help. Says I'm just stressed. Sarah, listen to me. If something feels wrong, trust your instincts. You sound like you're warning me about something. Her voice sharpened with suspicion. Dad, what's going on? I love you. That's what's going on. Whatever happens, remember that. She hung up confused, but I'd planted the seed of doubt. It would have to be enough. Sunday arrived with another thunderstorm. Fitting weather for what was coming. I'd arranged to meet Darian at the bank Monday morning, ostensibly to sign loan documents. Sarah thought they were picking me up for the airport afterward, a surprise addition to their Italy trip. Instead, federal agents would be waiting. Warrants, signed evidence, documented trap, ready to spring. I spent that last day in Margaret's garden talking to her roses about forgiveness and justice about love that sometimes had to be cruel to be kind. The blooms nodded in the wind, keeping their own counsel. That night, unable to sleep, I wrote Sarah a letter explaining everything. The theft, the con, the fake pregnancy, all of it. I sealed it with instructions for Bradley to deliver after the arrest. Dawn came too soon, and not soon enough. The trap was set, baited with greed and false documents. Tomorrow, Daniel Rostov would walk into a bank expecting millions and find handcuffs instead. I poured coffee and watched the sun rise over the neighborhood I'd helped build. Solid foundations I'd always preached. Sometimes that meant tearing down what was rotten to build something better. Sarah would hate me for a while, but she'd be alive free from a predator who saw her only as a meal ticket. That had to be enough. The phone rang. Marcus with final confirmations. Everything was in place. You sure about this, Steve? Once we start, there's no going back. I thought of Sarah at 16, paint-splattered and proud, of Margaret in her garden, of promises made and trust broken. I'm sure. Let's end this. Monday morning dawned crisp and clear, the storm having washed the humidity from the air. I dressed carefully in my best suit, the one Margaret had picked out for our last anniversary together. Looking in the mirror, I saw an old man preparing for war. At 7:30, Sarah called. Her voice sounded strained, exhausted. Dad, are you ready? Darian wants to stop by the bank first, then we'll pick you up for the airport. Actually, sweetheart, I'll meet you at the bank. Easier for everyone. Are you sure Darian says... Trust me, it's better this way. First National 9 o'clock sharp. I heard Darian's voice in the background, sharp and demanding. Sarah covered the phone, their muffled argument barely audible. When she came back, she sounded near tears. Fine, 9 o'clock. Dad, something's not right. Darian's been acting strange all weekend. Secret phone calls, packing things I didn't know we owned. What kind of things? Documents, cash, jewelry I've never seen. When I asked, he said it was for the Italy investments. But why would he need my grandmother's ring, the one Mom left me? My jaw clenched. I hadn't known about the ring Margaret's mother's 3-carat diamond that was meant for our first granddaughter. Sarah listened carefully. Whatever happens today, know that I love you and I'm protecting you." "Dad, you're scaring me. What's going on?" "Just be at the bank. Everything will make sense soon." I arrived 45 minutes early, meeting Bradley Morrison and Agent Jennifer Chen from the FBI Financial Crimes Division in a private conference room. Marcus Grant was there too, along with 2 uniformed officers and a federal prosecutor. "Your son-in-law's real identity has been confirmed," Agent Chen said, spreading files across the table. "Daniel Rostov wanted in 3 states for fraud, identity theft, and money laundering. The evidence you've provided gives us enough for immediate arrest." "What about my daughter?" "Unless we find evidence she was complicit, she's a victim. We'll need to question her, but she's not a target." Bradley handed me papers. "I've prepared emergency injunctions to freeze all accounts Rostov has access to. The house remains in your name. Their joint assets will be scrutinized, but Sarah should retain anything she brought to the marriage." "The ring," I said. "He has her grandmother's ring." Agent Chen made a note. "We'll recover all stolen property. Mr. Carlson, are you ready for this?" Was I ready to destroy my daughter's world, to expose her husband as a monster, to watch her heart break in real time? "I'm ready." At 8:55, I took my position in the bank lobby. Tom Richardson stood behind the teller windows, having cleared the bank of regular customers for the next hour. Security guards were actually federal agents. Every entrance was covered. At exactly 9 o'clock, Darian strode through the doors like he owned the place. Designer suit, Italian leather shoes, the confidence of a man about to score his biggest con. Sarah followed, looking pale and unsteady. "Steve," Darian boomed, all false bonhomie. "Ready to make some financial magic?" I stood slowly, meeting Sarah's worried eyes. "Actually, Darian, there's been a change of plans." His smile faltered slightly. "What kind of change?" Agent Chen emerged from behind a pillar badge raised. "Daniel Rostov, you're under arrest for federal wire fraud, identity theft, and money laundering." The transformation was instantaneous. The charming mask shattered, revealing something feral and desperate underneath. Darian or Rostov spun toward the exit, only to find it blocked by agents. "I don't know what you're talking about," he snarled. "My name is Darian Hayes. This is harassment. I want my lawyer." "Save it," Agent Chen said calmly. "We have your fingerprints from your first arrest in 2014. Your real wife in Newark already confirmed your identity. Oh, didn't mention you were still married. That makes your marriage to Ms. Carlson bigamous fraud, another federal crime." Sarah stood frozen, face white with shock. "Dad, what's happening?" "Darian." Rostov's eyes darted between us, calculating odds. Then he lunged for Sarah, grabbing her arm roughly. "You set me up, you and your father." "Let her go," I commanded, stepping forward. He yanked Sarah against him, arm around her throat. "Back off, everyone, back off, or I swear." "Darian, please," Sarah gasped. "You're hurting me." "Shut up." He tightened his grip. "This is your fault. You were supposed to be easy. Stupid, grieving girl with a rich daddy. But you had to go running to him with questions." The agents had their weapons drawn but couldn't get a clear shot. I raised my hands slowly. "Daniel." I used his real name deliberately. "It's over. Patricia Morrison, Elena Vance, they both survived you. Sarah will too. Let her go and face this like a man." His face contorted with rage. "You know nothing. They deserved it, all of them. Weak, pathetic women throwing their money at me, just like this one." "I loved you," Sarah whispered. "Love." He laughed bitterly. "Love is for marks. Love is how you separate fools from their money. Your father knows that. Look at him playing the grieving widower while sitting on millions. I was doing you a favor, giving you attention." The cruelty of it, the casual dismissal of my daughter's heart, made my vision red. But I held steady. "The Russians know where you are," I said quietly. "Viktor Volkov sends his regards. Says you have 2 choices, federal custody or his personal attention. Which sounds better?" That broke through his bravado. Fear flashed across his features. "You contacted Victor?" "He's quite reasonable, actually. willing to wait for legal restitution. But if you hurt my daughter, I'll tell him the deal's off. I'll pay your debt myself just for the privilege of watching him collect from you personally." It was a bluff, mostly, but Rostov didn't know that. His grip on Sarah loosened. "Dad!" Sarah's voice was small, confused. "It's okay, sweetheart. Mr. Rostov is going to let you go now. Aren't you, Daniel?" For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Rostov shoved Sarah toward me, making a last desperate break for the exit. He made it 3 steps before Agent Chen's partner tackled him to the marble floor. I caught Sarah as she stumbled, holding her tight as agents cuffed Rostov. He writhed and cursed, the mask completely gone now. "This isn't over, Carlson. You think you've won? She's nothing without me, nothing. Just another daddy's girl who can't think for herself." "Get him out of here," Agent Chen ordered. As they dragged him away, he locked eyes with Sarah one last time. "I never loved you. You were just a job. The worst one I ever took." Sarah crumbled in my arms, sobbing. I held her, whispering the same words I'd used when she was small, and the world seemed too big and cruel. "It's over, baby. You're safe. I've got you." Tom Richardson appeared with water and a chair. Bradley Morrison produced tissues. Agent Chen waited patiently while Sarah cried herself out. When she could speak again, her first word was, "Why?" So I told her. Everything. The stolen money, the fake identity, the other wives. I showed her Marcus's files, the evidence laid out in black and white. With each revelation, she seemed to shrink into herself. "The pregnancy?" she asked finally. "Fake. He was drugging you with fertility hormones, creating symptoms." She pressed a hand to her stomach, fresh tears falling. "I wanted that baby. Even if everything else was a lie, I wanted—" "I know, sweetheart, I know." Agent Chen stepped forward gently. "Ms. Carlson, I need to ask you some questions. You're not under arrest, but we need to establish what you knew and when." "I didn't know anything," Sarah said numbly. "I was so stupid. All the signs were there and I ignored them." "You weren't stupid," I said firmly. "You were targeted by a professional predator. He's done this before to smart, successful women just like you." The questioning took 2 hours. Sarah answered honestly, every admission stripping away another layer of the life she'd thought she'd built. When Agent Chen was satisfied, Sarah was purely a victim, she released us. "We'll need you to testify," the agent said. "But for now, go home. Rest. The prosecutor will be in touch." Bradley drove us to my house. Sarah silent in the back seat. Her car, the one Rostov had bought with stolen money, would be impounded as evidence. At home, I guided her to her old bedroom, unchanged since high school. She looked around at the familiar posters and trophies like she'd wakened from a long dream. "I can't go back to that house," she said. "You don't have to. This is your home for as long as you need." "The money will be recovered. The house is still mine. You can decide what to do with it later. None of that matters right now." She sat on the bed, picking at the quilt Margaret had made. "Everyone will know. All our friends, the family. They'll know how stupid I was. They'll know you survived," I corrected. "They'll know you're strong enough to rebuild. That's all that matters." A knock at the door interrupted us. Ruth had arrived somehow, knowing through that mysterious sister network that she was needed. She took one look at Sarah and opened her arms. Sarah flew into them crying again, while Ruth rocked her like the child she'd once been. I left them knowing some comfort could only come from another woman who'd loved and lost and survived. In my study, I stared at the photo of Margaret. "I did it," I told her. "I saved our girl, but I had to break her heart to do it." The photo smiled back, frozen in eternal joy. But I could almost hear Margaret's voice. "Hearts heal, Stephen. You gave her that chance." Outside, a news van pulled up. Word was spreading already. By evening, Daniel Rostov's arrest would be headline news. Sarah's name would be protected as a victim, but people would know. The gossip, the whispers, the judgment of those who'd never faced a skilled manipulator. But she'd survive it. She was Margaret's daughter, made of sterner stuff than Rostov had imagined. It would take time, therapy, and love, but she'd emerge stronger. My phone rang, Anthony calling from Rome. I heard. Is she okay? She will be, in time. The banker here wants to cooperate. Says Rostov tried to wire money this morning, but the accounts were already frozen. He's turning everything over to authorities. Good. How long can you stay? As long as you need me, brother. Family. Real family. The kind Rostov could never understand or value. I returned to find Ruth had gotten Sarah into a hot bath. My sister emerged, closing the door softly. How bad? I asked. About what you'd expect. Shock, humiliation, grief, but also relief. Some part of her knew something was wrong. She's been living in fear without understanding why. What do I do, Ruth? How do I help her through this? My sister, 5 years older and infinitely wiser, patted my cheek. You love her. You feed her. You remind her who she is when she forgets. And you give her time to mourn the life she thought she had. That evening, while Sarah slept exhausted from emotional trauma, I sat in Margaret's garden. The roses bloomed on indifferent to human drama. But their constancy comforted me. I'd torn down the false foundation of Sarah's life. Now came the harder part, helping her build something new and true on the ruins. But we'd do it together brick by brick, just like that summer when she was 16. The setting sun painted the sky in shades of pink and gold. Somewhere Daniel Rostov sat in federal custody, his grand plans reduced to a cell and a public defender. His other victims would have their justice. His creditors would circle like sharks. But here in this garden, surrounded by Margaret's roses and the home we'd built, my daughter was safe. Broken, but safe. And that was enough for today. Tomorrow the real work would begin. 3 days after Rostov's arrest, I found Sarah in Margaret's garden at dawn, still wearing yesterday's clothes. She sat among the roses, knees drawn to her chest, looking lost. Couldn't sleep? I asked, settling beside her on the bench. Every time I close my eyes, I see his face. Not the fake one he showed me, but that thing at the bank, like a mask coming off. She shuddered. Was any of it real, Dad? Even for a moment. Come inside. I'll make breakfast and we can talk. She followed me to the kitchen where I started Margaret's famous pancakes. Comfort food, the kind that said love without words. As I cooked, my phone rang. Marcus Grant. Steve, you need to hear this. Can you put me on speaker? I glanced at Sarah, who nodded. Go ahead, Marcus. The FBI cracked Rostov's laptop. He kept records, detailed notes on every woman he targeted. Sarah, I'm sorry, but you need to know this. He had a scoring system, rated women based on vulnerability, family, wealth, and what he called manipulation vectors. Sarah's face went white. What did he write about me? Marcus hesitated. You were rated optimal target. Recently bereaved mother, close to father, access to significant assets. He had a 12-month plan. Marriage, pregnancy, scare, major theft, then abandonment. 12 months, Sarah whispered. We've been married 11. There's more. He had plane tickets booked. One way to Rome, leaving tonight. Just him. And Steve, he'd already filed divorce papers in Nevada, planning to serve Sarah in Italy while he disappeared. I flipped the pancakes mechanically, rage simmering beneath forced calm. What else? Contact information for buyers. He was planning to sell everything he could grab. Sarah's jewelry, electronics, even personal documents for identity theft. And... Marcus paused. He had photos of your house, Steve. Floor plan, security system details. He was planning something bigger if the bank scheme failed. Sarah stood abruptly, rushing to the bathroom. I heard her being sick, the sound tearing at my heart. I'll call you back, Marcus. I found Sarah slumped on the bathroom floor, tears streaming. I brought him into our lives. If something had happened to you. Nothing happened. We stopped him. But I didn't see it. Mom would have known immediately. She had that sense about people. I helped her stand, seeing Margaret in her devastated expression. Your mother fell for a con man once, too, before we met. Sarah's head snapped up. What? She was 22 working at the library. Guy came in claiming to be a graduate student writing a dissertation. Charming, attentive, everything she thought she wanted. Borrowed money for research, then disappeared. Took her 6 months of savings. Mom never told me. She was ashamed. But it taught her to see the signs, made her stronger, more careful. When we met, she investigated me thoroughly, called my references, verified my business, even had her father run a credit check. Despite everything, Sarah almost smiled. Said she'd never be fooled again, and she wasn't. You inherited her strength, sweetheart. You'll learn from this too. My phone buzzed. Agent Chen texting that she needed to see us urgently. An hour later, she arrived with a sealed evidence bag. Ms. Carlson, I need you to identify these items. We recovered them from Rostov's luggage. Sarah gasped as Agent Chen laid out the contents. Her grandmother's ring, her mother's pearl necklace, a watch I'd given her for college graduation. Things she hadn't even realized were missing. He said he was having them cleaned, Sarah said numbly. For the trip. Classic tactic. Remove valuable items gradually so victims don't notice the pattern. Agent Chen produced another bag. We also found these. Passports. Multiple ones, all with Rostov's photo but different names. Darian Hayes, David Hoffman, Daniel Hamilton. How many people has he done this to? Sarah asked. We're still investigating, but we've identified at least 7 victims over 15 years. You're lucky, Ms. Carlson. Your father acted before he could complete his plan. Lucky. Sarah didn't look like she felt lucky. After Agent Chen left, Sarah retreated to her room. I gave her space, knowing some processing had to happen alone. Anthony arrived that afternoon, arms full of groceries. Figured you weren't cooking much, he said, unpacking ingredients. Thought I'd make Mom's gravy. Sarah always loved it. We worked side by side, the familiar rhythm of chopping and stirring easing tension. Anthony had closed his restaurant for 2 weeks, leaving his manager in charge. Must be costing you, I said. Family first. Besides, I have news. That banker in Rome, he found something interesting. What kind of something? Rostov wasn't working alone. Had a partner setting up the accounts. Woman named Brittany Chen. Ring any bells? I nearly dropped my knife. The cocktail waitress. Marcus said Rostov was seeing her. Not just seeing. She's been placing bets for him, moving money through casino accounts to wash it. My banker friend recognized her from security footage. She's done this before with different men. Another con artist. Looks like it. Birds of a feather. FBI might want to know. I called Agent Chen, immediately passing along the information. Another piece of Rostov's network unraveling. How deep did this go? That evening, Sarah emerged for dinner, drawn by the familiar scent of Anthony's cooking. She managed a few bites, listening, as her uncle told stories about Rome, carefully avoiding any mention of the ruined trip. I kept the villa booking, Anthony said casually. Whenever you want to use it. No pressure, but Italy isn't going anywhere. I don't know if I can, Sarah said quietly. He poisoned everything. Every plan we made, every place we were supposed to visit. It's all tainted now. Then we'll make new plans, I said. New places, new memories, when you're ready. My phone rang. Bradley Morrison with updates on the legal proceedings. Rostov's trying to make a deal. Claims he has information about a larger fraud ring. Prosecutors are interested but want corroboration first. Let me guess. He wants reduced sentence for cooperation. Exactly. Also, Steve, I've been approached by 3 media outlets wanting Sarah's story. National morning shows. I've declined all of them, but they're persistent. No media, Sarah said firmly. I won't be anyone's cautionary tale. After dinner, Anthony suggested watching old home movies. We gathered in the living room as he connected his phone to the TV. Found these digitized from Dad's old camera, he explained. The screen filled with decades-old footage. Sarah as a toddler taking first steps. Margaret in her garden, young and radiant. Birthday parties, Christmases, ordinary moments made precious by time. Look how happy she was, Sarah said, watching her mother on screen. She made everything beautiful. She still does, I said. Through you? Sarah leaned against me, and for the first time since the arrest, I felt her relax slightly. We watched our past selves frozen in happier times until Sarah spoke again. He kept asking about her, about Mom, what she was like, how she died, what she left me. I thought he was being caring, wanting to know my pain. But he was cataloging assets, wasn't he? Don't, Anthony said gently. Don't let him taint those memories too. How can I not? Every conversation we had, he was gathering intelligence. Every moment of vulnerability was just data for his con. On screen, 10-year-old Sarah helped Margaret plant roses, both of them dirt-smudged and laughing. The same roses that bloomed outside now. You know what he never asked about, I said. How to care for the roses. Never once showed interest in maintaining something just for its beauty. That should have been my first clue. Margaret would never trust someone who didn't appreciate her garden. The little things, Sarah murmured. All those little things I explained away. My phone buzzed. Marcus texting urgently. Check the news. I switched channels to find breaking news. Rostov's arrest had triggered a multi-state investigation. The FBI had raided addresses in New Jersey, Nevada, and Florida. The screen showed agents carrying boxes from a luxury apartment. Federal authorities say this may be one of the largest romance fraud rings in recent history, the reporter said. At least 12 suspects are in custody with damages estimated in the millions. Sarah stared at the screen. It wasn't just him. No, I said. It wasn't. You were targeted by professionals, sweetheart. This wasn't about you failing to see through one man. This was organized crime. The news showed a photo of Rostov being transferred to federal holding. Orange jumpsuit shackles, the glamorous mask entirely gone. Sarah turned away. I need air. She went to the garden while Anthony and I cleaned up. Through the window, I watched her walk among the roses, touching petals like talismans. She'll be okay, Anthony said. She's got Margaret's spine. I hope so. The worst is still coming. Trial testimony facing him again. She won't face it alone. That night, Sarah knocked on my door. Dad, can I ask you something? Always. Do you think I'll ever trust anyone again? Romantically, I mean. How can I when I was so completely fooled? I thought carefully before answering. Your mother asked me the same thing once, after her experience before we met. She said trust wasn't about never being fooled. It was about being willing to risk heartbreak for the chance at real love. But taking smart risks with eyes open. I don't know if I'm that brave. You are. You just need time to remember it. She hugged me goodnight, and I held her tight, this daughter who'd survived a predator and would emerge stronger. Tomorrow would bring more revelations, more legal proceedings, more pain to process. But tonight, she was home. Safe in the house where her mother's love still lived in every corner, surrounded by roses that bloomed through storm and sun alike. Rostov had tried to steal more than money. He'd tried to steal Sarah's faith in love, her trust in her own judgment, her connection to family. But he'd failed. Because what we'd built together, Margaret and I and our daughter, had foundations deeper than any con man could undermine. In the morning there would be lawyers and testimony, and the slow work of justice. But tonight there was family and memory, and the quiet strength of survival. And that, as Margaret would have said, was no small thing. 6 months later, I stood in the federal courthouse in Newark, watching my daughter take the witness stand. Sarah wore the navy suit we'd bought together, her grandmother's ring back on her right hand where it belonged. She looked composed, professional, nothing like the broken woman who'd sobbed in my kitchen that awful morning. State your name for the record, the prosecutor said. Sarah Marie Carlson. Her voice rang clear and strong. For 2 hours, Sarah testified. She detailed the manipulation, the theft, the elaborate lies. She didn't cry, didn't waver, even when Rostov's defense attorney tried to paint her as a willing participant. "You gave him access to your father's accounts," the lawyer pressed. "I gave my husband access," Sarah corrected. "The man I thought I'd married, not the criminal sitting at that table." Rostov watched her with cold fury, occasionally whispering to his attorney. But Sarah never looked at him, keeping her eyes on the prosecutor or the jury. She'd learned to see him as what he was, just another predator facing consequences. When she finished, I met her outside the courtroom. "You did it," I said, hugging her tight. "1 down, 2 to go," she replied. Rostov faced trials in 2 more states after this one. The verdict came 3 days later, guilty on all counts. 27 charges, including wire fraud, identity theft, money laundering, and bigamy. As the judge read the sentence, 40 years, with no possibility of parole, Rostov finally broke. "This isn't over," he shouted as guards moved to take him. "You think you've won? I know people. They know where you live." The judge added 6 months for contempt. Rostov was dragged out, cursing his final performance to an unimpressed audience. Outside the courthouse, Agent Chen shook our hands. "His network is finished. 43 arrests across 6 states. Over $15 million in stolen assets recovered. You started this, Mr. Carlson. Your evidence broke the case wide open. I just protected my family." Sometimes that's how justice begins. Reporters swarmed, but we pushed through to Bradley's waiting car. Sarah had given one interview to a financial crimes magazine, hoping to help other victims. Otherwise, she maintained her privacy. The drive home was quiet. Sarah stared out the window, processing the end of this chapter. As we pulled into the driveway, she spoke. "I want to sell the house. His house. Use the money for something good." "Whatever you decide." "I've been thinking about Mom's library idea. Remember, she always wanted to fund a financial literacy program, teach young women about protecting their assets, recognizing scams. Margaret had dreamed of that program, but never saw it realized. She'd love that. We could call it Margaret's Garden, growing knowledge, planting wisdom. I smiled, hearing my wife's influence in the wordplay. Perfect. Inside, Anthony waited with champagne and Ruth's homemade lasagna. A quiet celebration for the end of a long ordeal. We toasted justice, survival, and new beginnings. "To Margaret," Anthony said, raising his glass, "who taught us all to spot weeds among the flowers." To Margaret, we echoed. After dinner, Sarah surprised us. "I've been seeing someone." Ruth nearly dropped her wine. "What, who, when?" "His name is James, the teacher Anthony introduced me to in Rome." I remembered now. Anthony had mentioned a colleague visiting from Italy during the chaos of the arrests. Sarah had been corresponding with him, apparently. "He understood what I was going through," Sarah continued. "His sister was conned by someone in Rostov's network. We started talking about recovery then, about books, life, everything. It's just friendship now, but it's nice," Ruth finished gently. "It's honest. He sent me his complete background check on our 3rd video call. Financial statements, references, even his high school yearbook." Sarah laughed, the sound still rare, but growing stronger. "Said he wanted everything transparent from day one." "Smart man," I said. "We're taking it slow, very slow, but it feels different this time. Real." Later, as Sarah helped Anthony with dishes, Ruth pulled me aside. "She's going to be okay," my sister said. "Really okay. I know, she's her mother's daughter." That night I found Sarah in Margaret's garden, now expanded with new plantings she'd added. The moonlight caught on her grandmother's ring as she tended the roses. "Dad, I need to thank you." "For what?" "For seeing what I couldn't. For being strong enough to hurt me in order to save me. That couldn't have been easy. Hardest thing I've ever done. But you did it anyway. Because you loved me more than you feared losing me." She turned to face me. "I understand that now. The kind of love that protects even when it has to be cruel. That's real love. Not the performance Rostov gave, but the genuine thing." "Your mother taught me that," Sometimes love means making hard choices. I want you to know I'm not broken, Dad. Bent, maybe. Bruised, definitely. But not broken. And I'm going to use this. The program at the library helping other women avoid what happened to me. Making something good from something terrible. That's my girl. We stood among the roses, remembering Margaret and planning futures. Sarah's phone buzzed with a message from James, making her smile. Not the giddy, desperate smile she'd worn with Rostov, but something quieter and more genuine. He sends recipes, she said. Thinks cooking together over video is a good long-distance date. Safe but intimate. I like him already. 2 years have passed since that night. Margaret's Garden Financial Literacy Program has helped over 300 women. Sarah serves as director, using her story to teach others about financial predators. She and James married last spring in Anthony's restaurant garden in Rome. A small ceremony with just family, honest and real. At their reception, Sarah gave a speech that brought tears to every eye. My father once told me that strong foundations matter, that you have to dig deep, clear out the rot before you can build something lasting. 2.5 years ago, my life was built on lies. But with family, with love, with truth, we cleared the ground and started over. And what we've built is stronger than what came before. James took the microphone next. I fell in love with Sarah not despite her past, but because of how she transformed it. She took pain and made it purpose, took betrayal and made it wisdom. That's the woman I want beside me for life. Now, as I write this in Margaret's garden, Sarah is 8 months pregnant with their first child. A daughter who will wear her great-grandmother's ring someday, who will grow up knowing her worth can't be stolen by smooth words and false promises. Daniel Rostov serves his time in federal prison, his appeals exhausted. His network scattered his victims, compensated as much as possible. He's become a case study in FBI training materials, his methods dissected to help catch future predators. But I rarely think of him now. He was just a weed that tried to choke our garden. We pulled him out by the roots and planted something better in that space. Sarah and James visit every Sunday. We cook together using Margaret's recipes and Anthony's improvements. We tell stories of the grandmother their daughter will never meet, but will know through our memories. We tend the roses together, 4 generations connected by earth and love, and the strength to survive whatever storms may come. Sometimes Sarah asks if I regret how it all happened, if I wish I'd seen Rostov's nature sooner, prevented the pain entirely. No, I tell her honestly. You needed to learn your own strength, and you did. You survived, you healed, you helped others. That's not a tragedy. That's a triumph. She usually smiles, then her mother's smile, and changes the subject to nursery plans or program expansions. But I see the understanding in her eyes. The gratitude for a father who loved her enough to let her fall and strong enough to catch her, who helped her build new foundations on solid ground. Margaret would be proud of the women we've become in her absence. Sarah, who transformed victimhood into advocacy. Myself, who learned that protecting family sometimes means exposing harsh truths. Even Anthony, who closes his restaurant 1 week each year to teach financial security to young people in Rome. The roses bloom on season after season. New growth rising from old roots, beauty persistent despite thorns. Like our family, scarred but strong, tested but true. And in the end, that's the greatest victory over predators like Rostov. Not just surviving their deception, but thriving beyond it. Building lives too rich and real for any con artist to steal. That's our story. A family that faced betrayal and chose truth. That met greed with justice. That answered hate with love. And won. Before I close this story, I want to ask you something. Have you ever had someone try to come between you and your family? How did you handle it? What would you do to protect the people you love? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story touched you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more. And if you know someone who needs to hear about recognizing and escaping manipulation, please share this with them. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Remember, the strongest foundations are built with love, truth, and the courage to protect what matters most. Until next time, tend your own gardens well. Watch for weeds, nurture the flowers, and never forget that real love protects even when protection hurts. God bless and stay strong.